barabara, muingie hiyo masako, mufanye self discipline, si ndio? Lakini jameni, angalieni wazazi wetu hapa. Angalieni watoto wetu wasichana warembo. Jameni, kama una haja na huyo mtoto, omba pole pole. Omba pole pole. Hakuna haja ya kuchukua kwa nguvu. Ama ni namna gani wenzangu? Omba pole pole. Omba, na ukiomba uta.
With the uproar that ensued the assault on the female motorist, the government kicked off the registration exercise on the 28th of March, which is expected to run to the end of May this year. Nayuma Sampao, NTV.
And also, it has been the best that the Ministry of Education has attempted time and again to slay, that is the examination cheating, and one that Education CS Professor George Magoha has vehemently denied occurred in the just concluded national exams. Well, our investigative team reveals just how some of the cheating takes place through the eyes of someone who knows all too well, a student who claims to have cheated in the KCSE exams. Here's NTV's Ngena Kirori with more.
March 14th, 2022. The locks securing the Kenya Certificate of Secondary Education exam materials are broken, signaling for many students who poured over revision notes for days on end the chance for the rubber to meet the road. Except that others saw an opportunity to cash in on the examination process. Day one would see 5 people caught for examination malpractice.
We are more worried with cell phones, where in Kakuma, for example, we found cell phones almost equivalent to the number of students taking the exam.
And the examination malpractice did not end there. On March 21st, Oscar Brighton, a university student, was arrested and arraigned in court for attempting to sell examination material for 20,000 shillings. However, Professor George Magoha remained adamant that there was no examination leakage, insisting that there was no paper leaked before the containers were opened and that any paper distributed after that was early exposure.
That is not a leakage. So that word leakage is repugnant and it's totally unreasonable, unless there is another narrative which somebody wants to have.
Semantics aside, there was no doubt that the malpractice occurred during this examination period, at least according to a student we spoke to, who admits that he personally took part in the cheating. He agreed to talk to us on the grounds that we do not reveal his identity. We will call him Joe. On 28th of March, 2022, Joe, through text messages we have seen, launched communication with someone who had the 312/1 geography paper in his possession. It was scheduled for 11 a.m. on the material day. At 9:04 a.m., he received the examination paper and wrote down the notes on a napkin, which he successfully entered the examination room with. That wasn't all.
Alafu singine chemistry tulizipata, lakini si zote. Alafu pale kwa chemistry practical tulizipata zote. Tulingangania. Ilikuwa inakuja before tufanye exam, before tuanze paper. Kama paper ni ya 7, kama paper inavaa kwanza 8. Leakage ilikuwa inakuja saa 2, saa 1 dakika 15 hapo before the paper. So leakage ilikuwa real. Waache kusema ati leakage hakuna. Kenya we always use corruption.
Joe says that communication and circulation of papers takes place on most social media sites, which makes it hard for authorities to detect and track. Joe adds that some teachers are aware of the examination cheating that takes place. On April Fool's Day 2022, the Ministry of Education released a statement giving the key issues reported by a multi-sectoral monitoring team, key among them being: no examination paper was leaked to any candidate prior to the date of the respective examination papers. A few unscrupulous officials attempted to tamper and expose the contents to some candidates. In total, 50 people, including center managers, supervisors, invigilators, and support staff, have been arrested. A total of 300 cell phones were confiscated from candidates, teachers, and school staff.
We shall punish the children and we shall punish the teachers. Just wait and see. It's not a joke anymore. because I think it is a criminal offense to confuse a youngster who is very intelligent. You want to send things in a phone when he's already inside.
4 people were also found to be impersonating students during the concluded KCSE examinations. The Ministry of Education says all culprits will face the full force of the law. A total of 831,015 students sat for their KCSE examinations this year. The results are expected to be released in the next few weeks. Ngena Kirori, NTV.
Thanks, Ngina. And the country's engines may soon grind to a halt if the fuel situation is not dealt with urgently. A fuel shortage continues to bite in Western Kenya and many parts of rural country, with desperate motorists spending hours in long queues outside filling stations in search of the elusive commodity. And as Oko Kusa reports, Kisumu, Kakamega, Bungoma and Eldoret are some of the areas that have been hard hit by the crisis.
In Kisumu, motorists flocked to the Shell petrol station along the Kakamega highway after word went round that it was the only filling station selling the now rare commodity.
Hapa lita moja ni 162 V-Power ndio inapatikana.
Tunaomba serikali tafadhali, kama mnaweza tusaidia tu. Hii ndio chanzo chetu cha chakula. Hapa ndio tunalisha watoto wetu, na hapa hivi ndio kazi zetu kama vijana.
In Bungoma, one of the longest queues of motorcycles ever seen in the recent past was witnessed as riders spent the better part of the day at the remaining petrol station in the town with fuel.
Stima imeenda na tuko na watu karibu hapa, watu karibu 1300, lakini hakuna mafuta. Tumetoka Webuye tumekuja Misihu, tena hakuna mafuta, tena tumepanga laini.
Mafuta kuna station mbalimbali zinauza lita moja shilingi 200. Alafu tena kupata hiyo bidhaa muhimu imekuwa ni jambo ngumu sana.
Similar scenes were replicated in Eldoret town where motorists camped outside petrol stations waiting for fuel.
Nilitoka Chepsonoi mapema kitu 5:30 kielekea 6. Na nilikuwa na mafuta ya shilingi 250. Inifikishe Eldoret niweke full tank ndio nirudi. Kufika hapa nikapata laini ni mrefu. Haya, na mafuta yenyewe hawaweki na mtungi, wanakataa mpaka uende na pikipiki.
Like in Eldoret, from Kapsabet to Eldoret, there is no station which is operating, which is independent. Same with from Burn Forest. Apart from the Total, which is in Burn Forest, the others are just stopped selling because of the penalties and what is going on.
Speaking today for the first time since the fuel crisis hit the country, President Uhuru Kenyatta said this shortage is a trickle-down effect being felt globally from the ongoing Russia-Ukraine war.
Na waomba tuwaombee hawa wenzetu wawache hizo vita, kwa sababu wakuumia ni sisi. Wakuumia ni sisi, wananchi wa Afrika, Asia na kule kwingine ambao wanategemea hayo mafuta na mambo mengine kwa maendeleo yetu.
Ouko Kusa, NTV.
And elsewhere, China has reported 13,146 COVID cases. This is yesterday, the highest since the peak of the first wave more than 2 years ago, as the highly transmissible Omicron variant spread to more than a dozen provinces. Shanghai restrictions have threatened to snarl supply chains, with shipping giant Maersk saying that some depots in the city remained closed and trucking services would likely be hit further due to the lockdown. Anger is also rising among Shanghai residents following the lockdown that was initially announced to just last 4 days to master the city, but now appears likely to drag into late next week. And of course, the story that forms the basis of our conversation today, well, the Ministry of Health says that it has neither banned the use of the plastic baby feeding bottles nor the use of formula as a substitute for breast milk. It says that it has put regulations in place to govern the marketing of the substitute products. Well, this follows the enactment of the Breast Milk Substitute Act of 2021.
Exclusive breastfeeding for a baby's first 6 months of life is the ideal for nutrition and holistic health and well-being. But according to the Ministry of Health, 4 in every 10 children are not exclusively breastfed. Experts now argue that the use of feeding bottles may not be the safest way to administer milk to babies, and now pushing for the cup and spoon method.
The ministry is not banning the sale or advertisement or any market or marketing of this. What the ministry is doing is to regulate so that there is no unethical promotion of breast milk substitutes to the citizens of this republic.
As the regulation of these feeding items is pursued, due to environmental concerns, questions now linger following the plastic bottles.
Plastic ban of plastics in this country that was done under the Ministry of Environment some years back. That when we get there, it is the industry to know how to.
The ministry is looking to address situations where some children miss out on the required nutrients for their development. This happens in the event that the mother is absent or may not be able to breastfeed.
We are doing breast milk banking, and therefore mothers are able to donate breast milk. It's stored in aesthetic conditions, and when a child who cannot access breast milk is in that facility, he is able to access that breast milk.
According to the Ministry of Health, 97% of breastfeeding mothers are well capable of breastfeeding their infants, while only 3% face challenges in doing so. With free will at hand, the Ministry of Health hopes that the set regulations will hope to ensure best practices among mothers to ensure the safety of their young ones. Helen Aura, NTV.
All right, thanks, Helen. And of course, let's just get, to understand more about this whole dynamic of regulations and why now, why is the conversation coming up now? And of course, what needs to be done to make sure that we're not only feeding our babies, but we also give them nutritional meal. And of course, for this case, it is the milk. All right. And of course, to help us with that conversation in studio, we have Dr. Mate Rodriguez, who's a consultant pediatrician, Children's Hospital, that is at Mpisha Hospital. Thank you very much, Dr. for coming by today. How have you been?
I've been very good.
You've been well, yeah? It's good to see you once again. And then we also have Dr. Andrew Mulwa, who is the Director, Medical Services, Preventive and Promotive Health from the Ministry of Health. Thank you very much for coming by today. Dr. How are you doing this morning?
Good morning. Thank you very much.
All right. And of course, we also have Masi Gaki, who is a parent. It's so good to see you, Gaki, this morning. How are you?
Very well.
You're well, yeah? And of course, on Zoom, joining us is Hilary Lisimba Ambani, who is a parent. It's very good to see you this morning, Hilary. How are you doing? Hilary, can you hear me? Kindly unmute your mic. Okay. All right. So, Dr. let me just start with you, Dr. Andrew, right? There's this confusion about was there a ban, were there regulations? So it's like a very simple yes or no answer. Did you guys ban? That is the Ministry of Health, yeah? Did it ban?
Yes, the straight answer is no.
Okay, because there's a lot of debate, and I'm pretty sure you've seen, some of these conversations in terms of ban formula, ban, feeding bottles. Then what are we supposed to use?
I think the ministry at no time contemplated ban of formula or feeding bottles or any of the breast milk substitutes. And it's important to note that this conversation is coming through as a result of the national dialogue that was happening last week in the first national symposium on maternal, infant, and young child nutrition. And I think it's a good conversation because we are talking about the infant and young child health.
That's true.
Which is a subject that under normal circumstances does not find itself in the newsrooms unless there are extremes of malnutrition or extremes of droughts in parts of this country. So, and that actually serves the purpose of the symposium that we were having last week, to bring all the stakeholders on board, to do advocacy on the importance of proper maternal and infant and child nutrition. What the ministry did on the 27th of August 2021, not yesterday, not a month ago,
few months.
Yes,
yes.
Gazetted the breast milk substitute regulations 2021.
Okay.
And after gazettement of this, of course, there was a process before the gazettement where the industry and stakeholders were brought on board, public participation, there was call out for input from all the stakeholders,
okay.
and we had engagement with them, and we were able to agree on what the concerns that were raised.
Okay.
What these regulations aim to do is to regulate, is to control how marketing, promotion of breast milk substitutes is done.
Okay.
In other words, these regulations are promoting breastfeeding. That's the bottom line.
After all is said and done, we're still promoting breastfeeding. And of course, there's still a lot to discuss as far as breastfeeding is concerned. You know, there are so many instances where, for example, a nursing mom is not able to breastfeed. So then what happens? What are some of the alternatives? And I'd also want to understand, what are the substitutes? Like when you say substitute, what exactly does that mean? Like breast milk substitutes and the products as well. But of course, before we talk about that, let's hear from Dr. Mate. As far as breastfeeding is concerned, right? The big question is, what exactly is it about breast milk, you know, that makes it so valuable?
Yes.
That, again, what Dr. Mulo is saying, we are simply promoting breastfeeding.
Yes,
yeah.
we are promoting and protecting breastfeeding.
Okay, protecting.
To do.
All right.
So the reason why breastfeeding needs to be promoted and protected is because it is the ideal nutrition for an infant. It is dynamic, it is bioactive. So the reason why we're saying it is dynamic is because breast milk changes. From the beginning of breastfeeding, from the colostrum to mature milk, it changes to adapt to the needs of the child.
All right.
There is no other kind of fluid or food available to a baby that does that. And that is what we mean by it is dynamic. It has very many benefits that are not able to be replicated in breast milk substitutes. You can try, but there are some things that will not be exactly replicated.
That's true.
Some of the immune factors, and those are the ones we're calling the bioactive factors. So you have some immune cells, you have some proteins that confer or pass on immunity from a mother to a child, which are available in the breast milk.
Okay.
And why I'm saying it's dynamic, it changes from a preterm baby, the milk that a mom will have when she's nursing a premature baby is different from the milk that a mother will have when she's nursing a mature baby or a term baby. And it's also very different from the kind of milk that she'll have when she's unwell, because the mother's body will produce some antibodies,
That's true.
which again are able to be transferred to the baby and give this protection. And this is why we need to protect breastfeeding, because not only is it very dynamic and has these immunological properties, which are of good benefit to the baby, it is cheap and affordable.
Right.
It is
Easily
readily
accessible.
available.
Yes, and at the right temperature that the baby needs.
temperature.
Okay, I see.
There are a lot of benefits to breast milk
towards
as
the
to why
same.
we need to protect and promote
Yeah.
it. Yes.
All right. And of course, before we talk to you, Gahi, let's quickly talk to Hilary, who was somewhat like forced, you know, into this nursing, I would say, experience. So, Hilary, do you want to take us back? I mean, what happened that you were forced to solely take care of your child, and that is from feeding to changing diapers to, which is highly unlikely for so many men. Hilary? Okay. All right. So as we sort that out, because we seem to have a bit of challenge, you know, getting to Hilary. Mercy, for you, at some point, you had to use, with your first child, right? You had to use the bottle and, I mean, not the bottle, but the cup, right? Yeah. And I know there's a lot of discussion around the same, like how are we supposed to feed our baby with the cup? So what happened that you found yourself in this position?
Wow, this is very interesting. Yeah. I haven't even thought about it 10 years on. But of course, you know, you get pregnant, you expect to meet your baby. And one of the best ways to know your baby is through breastfeeding. You bond with your child through breastfeeding. So I waited till full term to get my baby. He didn't still come until 42 weeks. So the doctors had to get him out, you know. And so I went to hospital, they saw the induction and all that, but I remember the gyna had said, you're going to go through CS for this. But I don't know why then I was kept on a long labor, you know, and that really, I think, distressed the baby. So by the time he was got out, and I saw him like a day later, he just couldn't touch my breast. So however much I forced my breast on him, he would scream the hospital down.
All right.
You know, everyone came to see, who is this child, you know, bringing this
like
place down,
this.
you know. And of course the nurses said, now you have to express and just feed him using a cup. And we did that because, you know, you're tired and all that. I didn't expect this. You don't go to hospital expecting to cup feed,
That's
you know.
true.
So it was, you know, all this range of emotions, the confusion. But he fed very well on the cup. So once you give him the 2-3 spoons of milk, he's quiet and happy, and now stares at me. And I'm thinking, can't you just take the breast, you know? And so that's how we began our life from day one. And that went on. And it's so confusing, you know, when you're thinking, I thought you'd breastfeed, man. I want you to breastfeed.
Yes.
And I had so much milk that my breast is almost got sick.
Yeah.
I remember even a week later going back to hospital and telling the doctor, please help me to stop this milk because now he can't breastfeed. It's too much.
Yeah.
You've overstored it. What do we do? And they said, no, we can't stop. Let it just go on. And so we went on with our cup and spoon. It worked very well. In fact, when we ever tried a bottle,
no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's so cumbersome carrying a cup and spoon everywhere.
Yeah.
It's very cumbersome.
It's very, okay.
Yes,
Dr. Mate, can I just bring you in this sense? Because you see, we all know, right? And we all think that, I mean, it's natural. The baby knows that they're supposed to latch. The baby knows that they're supposed to suckle, right?
Yes.
But again, listening to your kids, like, that is not the case.
Yes.
So then, why? Like, isn't it just like a normal reflex? Once you put the nipple into a baby's mouth, they automatically know that they're supposed to feed?
So that is what is commonly perpetrated, that because the baby has or is born with a suckling reflex, then once you put a teat or a breast in their mouth, then they'll be able to suckle. But it is very much a learned skill for the child and for the mother.
Okay.
There is a proper way for the child to latch and to suckle so that you can have adequate breastfeeding or a smooth breastfeeding session. So as much, yes, the baby has a reflex, but it needs to be encouraged so that you have proper feeding where the baby is able to empty the breast quite adequately. The reason why we do encourage cup feeding as healthcare workers is because there's this notion you've had of nipple confusion. And so for babies who are either born premature or if baby has some underlying issues at birth, for example, if they've had a birth injury or a lack of oxygen, and therefore they're a bit unwell or not as active as a child who's not had any issues during birth, their suck reflex may not be as strong as expected. And we need to give it time for the baby to get there where they have an adequate suck reflex. So in this scenario, we actually do encourage cup feeding. And I do believe for most hospitals and healthcare workers, that would be the ideal way to give, whether it's expressed breast milk or in the instant where mother is not able to give expressed breast milk, a breast milk substitute is to give through cup and spoon. The reason is there are studies that have been shown that for children who do cup and spoon and transition into breastfeeding, they have a shorter duration of transitioning into breastfeeding as opposed to children who are bottle fed. So that is why we encourage the cup feeding, and we will talk further about it. There are very real dangers associated with bottle feeding. And this is the part where, as healthcare workers, we need to come in a bit more strong and educate the mothers. Once you're leaving the hospital, you know, most people are like, yes, go and breastfeed, and we don't encourage you, we don't talk to the mothers about what happens when you're going back to work. What happens when you're not at home or available to breastfeed your baby? What options do you have? So obviously, what has filled that gap now is bottle feeding. And that is onus is on us as healthcare workers now to provide the alternatives.
Now, there's this question, and it was, again, widely talked about, where someone might ask, but what is it about the bottle feeding? Because when you look at the teats, it's more or less mimics the nipple, right? So why is it then difficult for a baby to once they are on bottle feeding, go back to nipple, like, what is it? That then they're like, no thanks, I do not want this. I absolutely want this, right?
Yes.
But before that, Dr. Mulwa, and then that aspect of, because we talked about substitute and, an aspect of the products as well, which is very, very important. The question is then, because what Gaki and of course Dr. Mate have talked about, and that is you can still express your milk, put it in a cup, and then feed it to the baby, unlike using the feeding bottles. So I'm just curious, what is it about the feeding bottles that is just, a big deal? Like, no, don't use this. If you can just use the cup.
I think we live in an environment where, one, infectious diseases contribute significantly to mortality and morbidity of children. And therefore, an environment that I would say, for lack of a better word, that is not as hygienic. So the first thing is feeding bottles are very hard to maintain good standards of hygiene.
All right.
And therefore, most of the time are easily a cause of infection to the child. So therefore, posing a risk to the child in the first place. Unlike cup and spoon, which is easy to clean, and you can maintain a good level of hygiene. Secondly, the bottle, one, and you say it mimics the baby, the teeth,
the nibble,
which in truth, in terms of the texture, in terms of the material, does not.
Okay.
And therefore actually brings a confusion to the baby.
All right.
And like Dr. has already mentioned, makes the child think or feel, get confused in terms of the suckling reflex, in terms of getting to to know this is indeed breast teat, and this is not the plastic. So that confusion hinders the child from feeding well from the bottle.
From the bottle.
Then number three is in terms of cleaning, not just the hygiene, because of the cleaning. It's very, very difficult to clean those bottles, and the cost of all that becomes significant to most of the population. And you find it is almost impossible to maintain a healthy bottle feeding.
Okay. This is just me thinking, based on the things that I have seen, right? Because I do not have a child of my own right now. But in terms of and especially when it comes to hygiene, what you're saying, I've seen so many parents, again, try to clean the bottle very well, right? But also soak them in hot water just to, kill the germs. But at the same time, I've seen other parents who use the microwave. So there's like the microwave sterilizer, where they would use some of these bottles, clean them first, and then put them in the microwave, just do that for like a few seconds, and then the bottles are out and they're clean and they remain in a sterile environment. No?
I'm smiling because
when
you talk about the microwave,
that's a big risk on its own.
That's a big, already you are talking about maybe under 5% of the population.
True.
So the reality is in our setup, in our environment, that still is for the very few privileged families.
No, but even the ones that would use like hot water, make sure they wash the bottles and then leave them, and especially the teats, leave them in hot water for a while.
You are talking about hot water again.
Yes.
How many families can afford fuel to just warm that water? In terms of paraffin, in terms of gas, cooking gas, in terms of firewood, you're talking about a community that's already struggling to get basics. So therefore, even getting that hot water is a challenge.
Yeah.
We have struggled over the years to just maintain hot drink, to boil drinking water. If it's impossible to boil drinking water for a community, and that's why we continue to have all these of waterborne diseases.
But is it not the same case for the cups though? Because you'll still have to wash the cups still with warm,
exactly.
hot
and
water.
Remember what we're saying.
Yeah.
It's breastfeeding.
Okay.
Breastfeeding will be appropriate for 95% of
most
new
nursing
mothers.
parents. Yeah.
So the 5% now are the ones that you are giving options. So we don't like say cup and spoon. No, it is for those who, for one reason or another.
Okay.
So you are dealing with a small number.
A small number.
Yes.
Okay, I see.
So therefore, those who are extremely okay, they have the microwaves, they are able to do that. We have not, and that's what we are saying. Remember, we are talking about population health and not individual.
Not individual
yeah.
health. Okay, I see that. All right, let's talk to Hillary now, who, like I said earlier on, was somewhat like forced to take, you know, the #1 role as far as taking care of your baby, and of course just forced into like full mode and nursing mode, including, like we said earlier on, feeding the baby, changing diapers, and all those things. So Hillary, how did you find yourself there?
My wife got a dream job, one we had looked for so long.
All right.
So we had two options. Either she turns that down, which, you know, would have haunted her, or she takes the job and then I raise the baby. But I was like, I'm a father, so if she can take the job, I believe I can as well raise the baby. The only problem was the bit about breastfeeding had not exactly sunk into my mind very well. So even as I was accepting, I knew I'll just, you know, boil water, you know, put the milk in the warm water and the baby breastfeeds.
Yes.
Until now things, you know, got down to actual breastfeeding. That is when I knew this thing is not easy. But somehow, you know, everybody learns, because then again, we were both first-time parents, so she didn't exactly have any better experience than I am. The difference was she was a mom, I was a father. Otherwise, we were making mistakes, you know, together as we were raising the baby. So just at this time, I was making the mistakes alone. And I'm glad I made them, because I learned from them.
Okay. So how old was your child when your wife had to leave?
It's not easy, trust me. The child was 6 months old.
6 months, okay.
Still breastfeeding. Yeah.
Okay.
And, you know, she had tried to make him stop breastfeeding, but, you know, moms will always just go back because the baby cries and she's like, no, let me just give him one more time, you know. So by the time her date of moving got there, he was not weaned yet. She had tried weaning him, but a mom is just a mom. She will always want to just keep it. So now her date of moving came, she went and the baby wanted to breastfeed. And of course, you know, as a man, there's little bit of breast you can actually feed a baby. So I only had the bottle now, depend on.
And of course, there were interesting tactics that you had to use just to make sure that the baby feeds. And I'll come back to you to just tell us what options did you have, really, just to make sure that the baby feeds. Because again, at the end of the day, the baby has to be fed, right? But let's talk to Gaki. So here you are thinking, can you just breastfeed? Like, at least, please try, you know? But that was not happening. So did you then probably try bottle feeding?
So actually, since the health workers advised that I express and then we cup feed, the cup feeding went very well. Actually, it's so relieving, you know, when you see the baby taking the milk from either the spoon or the cup. Of course, it looked odd to those who are coming to see him in the hospital or at home.
Yeah.
But at least it was working for me. Of course, it was also not so easy for me, who still wants him to breastfeed.
Yeah.
And we went on for a while. But at 5 months, he discovered, oh, this milk comes from somewhere.
Okay.
And the day he latched, the rest became history.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Indeed, yeah.
You know, I was watching some of the videos of babies who are fed, you know, through the cup. And first of all, it was just a cup. And what I saw is the baby struggling to feed, in the sense that all the milk was just coming back to the cup. You know, so it got me thinking. So how does that work? Because it's like you have to be, number one, very, very patient. You know, it takes time because again, it's not a natural thing for the baby to do. It's because they're born, like you said, with reflux, right? Suckling reflux. But now here you are putting just the cup into the baby's mouth and then let them figure out how to get the milk into the stomach. Yes. So most of the time the milk was just going back to the cup. So how does that work? How do you teach the baby? And at what point do you introduce the same?
Yes. So with cup feeding or cup and spoon feeding, like you said, it requires a lot of patience. It's a learned skill.
Yeah.
And let me be very clear, even breastfeeding to the baby does not come naturally. It's also a learned skill.
That's true.
Just because baby has a sucking reflex, it does not mean that that sucking reflex is enough to give baby adequate milk.
All right.
So the same way you have to patiently teach a mother how to latch and position her baby during breastfeeding, it's the same patience that you actually need to teach a mother how to cup feed.
All right.
So there are different ways that you can do cup feeding. You can use cup and spoon. The spoon helps in that you're able to put in small amounts. Baby requires to be in an upright position.
All right.
Again, we need to teach this because in the African society,
it's like
want to pour the food into the baby's mouth and expect them to
Yes.
swallow. But remember, this is something that the child has to get used to.
Yeah.
So you want the baby in an upright position. If anything, you're just leaning very small degree of leaning the child, but you do not want the child in a lying down position.
All right.
So hold the baby up, support their neck, and this is from the newborn period. So hold the baby in a semi-upright position. You want to use either a spoon or a small cup. So where I work at Tempisha Hospital, we tend to use, the small cup that is on top of the cough syrups or the medicine syrups.
Yeah,
it's
very
a very tiny.
Yeah.
So again, you're not trying to give a large amount to this small baby.
All right.
You're teaching them in small bits. So you want to put maybe even about 20 to 30 ml of milk, and you want to put the cup or the spoon on the lower lip of the child and slightly tilt the cup.
Okay.
So that the milk is just touching the lower lip.
Okay.
And then
So
after
like
that, you're waiting for the baby to kind of slurp the milk into their mouth.
Yeah.
You're not pouring the milk into the baby's mouth.
Okay.
So they start to learn that they can put the milk in their mouth and then swallow it. So in a sense, even with breastfeeding, it's a sucking and swallowing kind of reflex. It's just that in this case, you're not having the sucking part of it. But you want to tip the milk, allow the baby to put the milk in their mouth and then have a swallowing reflex. And then now wait to take another bit of milk into their mouth.
Okay.
And slowly they learn how to put the milk from a cup into their mouth at a rate that is acceptable
to them,
to the baby.
Okay.
Because with bottle feeding, the other thing that we are very aware of, it's free flow. It's a teat with holes in it, and this is why the regulations come into play.
All right.
Because you have some which are free flow, they have bigger holes, so babies are having choking hazards. You're having babies with their bottles lying down, as you will see in some of the pictures and the advertisements. The baby is lying down as they're taking their bottle.
Like a boss.
Yes, exactly. And
Feeding
the baby
like a
looks
boss.
very comfortable.
Yeah.
But what we need to educate mothers about this is it puts the child at risk of choking, like I talked about, and also ear infections, which have been shown by studies that children who are bottle fed have a higher risk of ear infections associated with the bottle feeding in comparison to children who are breastfed or cup fed.
Okay.
So when we talk about regulations, we are not villainizing the bottle. We want to educate mothers that there are very real risks, health risks associated with bottle feeding. And in the same breath, there are safer alternatives.
Okay.
If you're not able to breastfeed your child for medical reasons, there are safer alternatives
that you can use. Okay. Ear infection, and I know this is also one of the things that a lot of people had questions about, like how do you get ear infections from bottle feeding, and all those things. And of course, even, aspect of Dr. Muller talked about, other infections, right, that the baby is exposed to, and especially for those ones who are bottle fed. Some people are saying, listen, bottle feeding has been here for a very long time, right? Some of us were actually brought up, bottle fed. And some were saying, but we turned out okay. So why is the conversation now? Well, let's take a short break. But of course, when we come back, we'd also want to understand, infections, how do they come in? And also that aspect of substitute and regulations, all right? So what exactly are they, that they, as in the Ministry of Health, together with the World Health Organization, exactly regulating? And what does this say, especially to you as a parent? And of course, don't forget the question that we're asking you today, and that is, do you agree with the regulations that is, that has been set aside by the Health Ministry? Of course, we'll also be looking at your feedback after this short break. Stay with us. This is Your World.
And that's why you see.
Burgers for $6. Did you say 6? Fungua app. Ding dong, double. Your favorite moment.
Now your favorite ice cream. Ding dong, double. It's so good.
Order what you want to select what you want.
Ding dong, double. Order it now. Download the app, order a Glovo, and we get it. Ding dong, double.
Through our global presence, we offer world-class banking services. We support SMEs through the Tony Elumelu Entrepreneurship Program by providing 5,000 USD seed capital and capacity building to young entrepreneurs. Apply today at www.tefconnect.net and visit any UBA bank branch to open an account today.
Make this feel like this with a few sips of this. Get going with Go Fruit Juice, now available in 500 ml on the Go packs.
All right, welcome back. Of course, the conversation continued even during the break, but remember, it's all about breastfeeding dynamics today. And of course, this is from that announcement by the Health Ministry, and this is as far as regulation that is of breast milk substitutes and products as well. And of course, right about now, Dr. Mulo, just to make it clear for people to understand, you know, when you say substitute, when you say regulations, you know, like what exactly does it cover? Just to make it clear for people to understand.
The breast milk substitutes are regulations of the Breast Milk Act, Regulation Act of 2012.
All right.
The Act was passed in 2012, but regulations were gazetted in 2021.
Yeah.
What these regulations basically do is to first, it defines what breast milk substitutes are.
Okay.
Defines products that the breast milk substitutes talks about, including teats, including breast milk supplements, formula feeds, and all. It also defines in terms of feeds for complementary substitutes for complementary feeding.
All right.
And therefore, these breast milk substitute regulations talk about the marketing, the promotion, ethical interaction with healthcare workers. It sets up a certain committee that now regulates how or governs how the trade, the promotion, and of these breast milk substitutes is done in the country, and gives guidelines on how engagement of the industry with the Ministry of Health and Healthcare Workers happens.
Okay.
So that as Dr. Mulwa, I am not sponsored to go for my master's or my postgraduate or for my doctoral PhD studies by industry that is selling breast milk substitutes, because by so doing,
of course,
I will be a biased practitioner.
Yes.
I am not sponsored for a workshop. The industry does not sponsor the renovation of a newborn unit.
Okay.
You know, these are the
that would be a
things
bias. Yes, it's true.
These are the
There
things
would be a bias
that
to the same, yeah.
the regulation is doing. So that interaction, and this is not a new regulation. You look at this and you look at the tobacco regulations, for example. It's just a similar way. What we are trying to do is at no point you are trying to deter an ethical promotion of marketing of breast milk substitutes. Because if you don't do that, then it would mean the industry has a right to have reps in every maternity so that after delivery the mother is told, instead of breastfeeding you have an option.
This is what you can use, yeah.
So we are trying to, one, protect and promote breastfeeding. That is, I continue repeating, is the bottom line.
It's
of
the bottom
regulation.
line.
The regulations say that if, for example, a healthcare worker wants to, an industry wants to interact with healthcare workers, there is a procedure that should be followed so that that interaction remains ethical, because we have seen circumstances where healthcare workers are sponsored for certain courses, for certain workshops, for certain symposium to attend, postgraduate training. Of course, you know what that means. And therefore, this is important so that this whole ecosystem remains ethical and remains protected. And in other words, when you are talking about marketing, for example, if it's a bottle, a feeding bottle, having a label that says breastfeeding is superior to bottle feeding is a message. So that's all what we are saying.
Okay.
So that if it's a formula feed, there is a clear indication that breastfeeding is breast milk.
So that has to be there.
Yes, that is exactly the provisions of the regulation.
Of the regulation.
So that you are able, just like in tobacco industry, there are warnings.
Excessive.
We are saying we need messages that promote breastfeeding, even in these breast milk substitutes.
All right. But what about like a case of labeling? Because again, talking about the cup feeding or the bottle feeding, I mean, for the bottle, most people would argue and say, but there are markers, so the parent knows or the caregiver knows that this is how much the baby is supposed to be given at this particular time. For the cups, do we have that? So some might be like, but it's safer if I use a bottle because there are markers. I know the baby is only supposed to be given 20 mLs, 30 mLs, 40 mLs, you know. So isn't that okay? Or what exactly does the regulation then cover when it comes to labeling? And of course, marketing, like you said, of the same.
The labeling that I'm talking about is just the bottle label.
What is written?
What is written on the bottle. The bottle
the
needs to have, you can have your figures, but say in the bottle that one, this breastfeeding is superior to bottle feeding.
Okay, but what about then the quality of what is in the, for example, the container, right? Because they might just right there, breastfeeding is like the best alternative, but what happens then to the quality?
There are national and global regulations to what is in the formula.
Okay.
And there is what we call the codex that the Kenya Bureau of Statistics maintains.
All right.
So that every product has to meet certain standards. So therefore, that is an industry regulation, the component that is with the Bureau of Standards and the trade industry, the trade. But for us as health sector, because we are guaranteed because of that regulation that whatever is sold as infant formula has contains what is supposed to be infant. That is the now regulation of the industry.
All right.
As what we are regulating is make sure, even as you bring that content, you say that breast milk is superior to this content.
Okay.
Yes.
I mean, I might read the message, right? For example, as a parent, but it's easy for me to just
ignore.
Maybe for some people, because we've always had this issue as a Kenyans. Number one, we don't, okay, not all of them. Some don't read labels. It's just, see, I know this is, for example, formula, or this is rice, or this is whatever it is that people consume. We don't usually read, you know, the label a lot. So then how do you make sure that then, fine, it is written there, but at the end of the day, the consumer knows what exactly is written, you know, there, and they understand, and they actually adhere to what is written there?
One, the Ministry of Health and its other partners working in the breastfeeding space does what is called health promotion.
Okay.
So we will continue to do the health promotion.
All
we
right.
will continue to do health education and advocacy for breast milk
Okay.
and breastfeeding.
Okay.
So it is upon the ministry now to continue promoting the healthcare workers as well. But now, in terms of having that message, it is important. You may not read it, but it is at least available. So if you care to read, you will see the information, and therefore, that message may be what will awaken your subconscious mind.
Okay.
Because and you are the expert in communication. In terms of communication, having the message there
makes a difference.
Makes a difference.
That's true.
Yes.
That's true. Okay. But we always talk about formula, right? Cow's milk, goat milk, camel, for those who feed, are they also considered substitutes, Dr. Mate? Because we don't talk about that a lot. And that is where, remember the 90% of the population that you talked about?
Yes.
Majority of them will actually gravitate towards cow's milk, you know, as compared to formula, because a lot of people, again, cannot afford formula. So is that considered a substitute?
Yes, definitely. So a breast milk substitute is any substance, fluid or otherwise, that is advertised or marketed as an alternative to breast milk. So yes, cow's milk, camel's milk, goat's milk, all falls under
the
breast milk substitute.
But do we have regulations for the same?
So, and this is why I support Dr. Mulwa when he says the ministry does their part. They play their role in terms of labeling and regulating. But there is also a huge part that needs to be played by the healthcare workers, breastfeeding and lactation counselors, the hospitals, the social workers who go out and see the mothers. It is not just upon the ministry to put the labeling and we say that is enough. There needs to come education, and this comes in very many different facets. We've talked about different categories of clients. There are those who can afford to do the bottle feeding and do it very safely. There are those who may not be able to. And I think the reason why you're bringing up cow's milk is also affordability of infant formula.
That's true.
Is something that we need to talk about. So what are the other alternatives for a mother who is not able to breastfeed or and is still not able to afford infant formula? So this is where we come in as healthcare workers, and there are steps towards giving safer alternatives. The most recent one being the Pumwani Milk Bank, where you have pasteurized donor milk. And in this sense, for a mother who is not able to breastfeed her baby or to produce milk, whether because she's on medication that doesn't allow her to breastfeed, then, or if there is a child who's been abandoned, or unfortunately if the mother has died, then there are safer alternatives that are coming up. And donor breast milk, pasteurized donor breast milk is one of the alternatives. Let us not forget, even when we were brought up, there was wet nursing, where you could have a relative feeding another mother's child, whether it's an auntie or a relative, and this was socially acceptable, and it was a safe option. So we're trying to say that there are very many alternatives when it comes to mothers or children who are not able to obtain breast milk from their mothers. And we need to educate mothers about this, because even when it comes to cow's milk, goat's milk and camel's milk, there are very real dangers associated with these alternatives. One, the amount of protein contained in these alternative animal milks are too high for a baby's kidneys to be able to break down, as well as the mineral content in this milk. There are very few regulations on cow's milk, especially in the rural areas. There are very few regulations in terms of what amount of cow's milk am I supposed to give the child? Should I dilute
we see
the cow's milk? Exactly, a lot of people will be diluting the cow's milk. So who is it that is regulating how much cow's milk or how much goat's milk your child is going to be able to get? And we see a lot of children coming in with allergies, intolerances to these kinds of milk. And that is why I'm saying, in conjunction with the ministry, the healthcare workers need to come into play to educate the mothers, because like he said, putting a label is the first step. But if a mother knows that there are these alternatives. When I go and look at the formula, and I'll think maybe now that I've seen the label, maybe I can get a breastfeeding counselor or maybe a nurse or a doctor who can help me to see how I can promote breastfeeding.
Okay.
Yes.
To the baby. Okay. And Gaki, you said, you were taught very well. You know, you got it, and it was very, very easy for you. Just in case someone is watching us right now and thinking, how? You know, like, how do I start? At what point do I start doing this? How do I feed the baby? And also the aspect of storage, because a lot of people find it very easy to store the milk in the bottle, right? Like, and for example, if someone is expressing milk, because we have some women who have more than enough, right, milk, and they want to express and then store it for the baby. So it's easier for them to just store them in the bottle, put them in the freezer or in a fridge, and then, you know, that's it. But when you talk about the cup and the spoon, so is it easier in terms of storage? Like, what happens? What was, you know, the situation for you?
So I keep insisting that, yes, I was taken through those steps so clearly.
Yeah.
And, you know, as a mother, you want the best for your child.
Absolutely.
So what you're told, please do it. So at the hospital, I was at Valley Hospital in Nakuru, I was told how to clean the cup, you know, whether to dip it in hot water, clean the spoon well, and where to store it. And since I told you I had a lot of milk, I was also told how to store it. You don't store the milk in the cup. Actually, they tell you after you fed the baby, what remains, you should pour it. You should not go and take it back.
Yeah, it's
so
like,
when you follow those
basic
steps, then you're able to do, it becomes easier for you. And of course, at some point when I ever tried a bottle, it didn't go too well. They seemed to be easier with the cup. You know, once they learn how to, you know, take in the milk, as Dr. Mate was saying, from the cup, it becomes even more fun for them. It's even easier when you're feeding using the cup or even the cup and spoon than when you have to, you know, use the bottle every time.
All right.
Of course, I found the bottle also a bit clumsy sometimes when you have to clean it, because you might not be too sure, did I get all the corners right? Did I get all the, you know, when you cock it, you know, all those two rings around there, are they also, you know,
well
clean as I was supposed to get it? You may also get it right, but whoever is caregiving for you when you're away is another problem. How did you train them too? So I think also that's the gap where we have, and as we are being told, the healthcare workers have some work to do, because you as a mother may get it right, but whoever is taking care of that baby when you're away, are they doing it right, or are they in a hurry to, you know, fix a few other things?
Okay.
So the basics, they're just basics, by the way. Using hot water, you know, let it dry nicely, or you wipe it with a clean cloth. But there's some people even who go and use chemicals to clean, which are really discouraged. So all these dynamics come into play when a mother is, you know, taking care of her child, or, you know, helping your child get a nutritious diet
that they need. Okay. So then how did you store the excess? Because like you said, you were told once the baby is full, whatever is remaining, discard it. Don't store it in the fridge, right? In the cup. But what about a case where you had to express? Because I want to believe at some point you had to go back to work, right? And we're only given 3 months maternity leave. So what happens to the other 3? So where or how did you store, you know, the ones that you expressed?
Okay, when you're expressing, which most mothers I think do at some point, you also get the storage bags, which are sold in the shops, you know. And it's good to know what amount you're putting for what time. You know, so that, you know, when you remove it from the freezer, you don't assume you're going to take it back, because taking it back has its own, you know, risks and dangers. So all this is advice you're given when you go to those clinics. You know, take them back, you know, to have them weighed and all that. You're told what to do. And so I expressed, yes, and stored them in bags. You're even given the measurements. How do you store at a certain point? You know, the thing is, are you able to follow those instructions? And of course, there are people who don't even have the freezers to put them in. So that's where the danger again comes in for many mothers, and especially those even who have little milk. There's some who have almost nothing, you know, and they have to use formula. But when you follow the instructions, it gets very clear.
Okay, all right. But let's talk to Hilary now, who, again, Hilary, were you on full-on formula, or did you have to, you know, substitute between formula, maybe introduce some bit of solid foods? Because like you said, when your wife was leaving, your baby was 6 months?
Yeah, she was 6 months old. He was 6 months old. And she left me a bit of milk before leaving.
Okay.
So now when that ran out, the only option was now formula. Now, the problem was that because, I was forcing this baby to move from breast milk, formula, on a crash program. I had so many problems with him, having a blood stomach, he doesn't want to feed. And that can be frustrating because I was wondering, is it because I'm a father? Is it because, I'm not giving through the breast? I didn't really exactly know why we had so many problems because the milk was there.
All right.
But the baby didn't like the milk on so many occasions. So I would get really frustrated. But you see, as a parent, you want your baby to feed somehow, even if it means, the world stopping for that baby to feed somehow. The world has to stop because the baby needs it. When time feeding comes, it needs it.
So did you understand why the baby had problems with it? Was it the bottle, or was it the fact that it wasn't like the actual breast milk? Like you said, you had to devise other ways, yeah, just to make sure that the baby was feeding. Do you want to take us through that?
Now, when he stopped checking from the bottle, something told me maybe it's because he can see the bottle, but he's used to seeing, a mom breastfeeding. So I decided to poke some holes into my t-shirt. Then I would put the bottle inside. Then only the nipple comes out.
All right.
So when I did that the first time, he looked at my face and he was wondering, okay, there's a disconnect somewhere because this is a guy, this is my dad, but why does he seem to have, have a breast giving me?
Yeah.
So now I had, because I looked at his face and I could tell he was shocked. Like he was wondering, okay, I can feel this milk coming out. But the guy giving me the milk is my mom. So there's something missing somewhere. So the best way to learn now was to start covering his face so that every time he's breastfed, I would take a shawl and just cover the face so that hiding inside, he does not see, okay, this is dad, like I'm actually breastfeeding from dad.
Okay.
So that seemed to work.
Okay.
Although every time, sometimes shawl would come out and it was pandemonium because now he would start crying and wailing and just praying. The moment he realized there's something not right here, we always had chaos when that happened. And at night, I would have to do it in the dark so that he does not see me happen.
Okay. And for how long did that work? Because I've also seen like pictures online where again the dads would have to print the picture of the mom and then put it on the face so that the baby thinks that it's the mom. So for how long did that go on for?
It worked for like 3-4 months.
Oh wow. Okay.
But then you see, the more I had problems, the more I had to be inventive. So I decided now to start thinking of how best can I, just make this work. Because the truth is we were barely managing. He was breastfeeding, but we were having so many problems. Because he was not feeding well, the dynamics of just giving the milk when he's covered. I'm also stressed about him. I'm not sure whether he'll finish, breastfeeding. So I had to always think of other ways. That's when I started now, thinking of adding other things, like a smoothie, those other things. So basically, I forced him to mature. And it's helped me because to this day, he thinks way ahead of, so many things. Like we struggle a lot because I basically forced him to mature. Like I was like, this has to work. I know you are younger than this, but we have to help each other. Help me raise you. Like I'm struggling, so don't make things difficult for me. Help me raise you as well.
All right. And like you said, your wife left you sufficient amount of milk, but again, did it get to a point where you had to use other alternatives for the baby? If so, which ones?
No, I bought formula. I spent so much money on formula because I thought of other options and I was like, I think the only closest option I have is formula. So I would buy formula in bulk. That's what kept me going. Yeah.
All right. And Dr. Mati, of course, there's a lot that Hillary had to do really just to make sure that the baby feeds. Yes. And someone might ask, do they know, like, this is mom, this is dad,
Yes.
I need to feed very well,
Yes.
you know, like this whole dynamic of when mom is not available, there's a problem.
Yes,
Because
they do.
there's no breast, you know, to have the milk from.
Yes, they definitely know, because one of the benefits of breastfeeding that we say is bonding.
Yes.
So the baby knows from how the mother smells, from her heartbeat. The baby has been with the mother for 9 months.
True.
So for sure they know. But like what Hilary was saying, children learn, and that's the beauty about babies. They
Yeah.
learn just about anything.
Yeah.
They're a clean slate, and it depends on what you add on. And so as much as they know the difference between breastfeeding and this is mom who's not breastfeeding me, there are ways to help, because like in Hilary's situation, maybe we'd seen them earlier and we knew that he was struggling so much. Some of the ways to help him bond with the baby so that it's not such a foreign concept would be even to do something like kangaroo care, you know, where father bonds with the baby. And in that way it kind of mimics the kind of bonding that the baby has been having with the mom. You have skin to skin care. You have the baby feeling the father's heartbeat, and this is something that we encourage fathers to do even with premature babies, because it helps with temperature regulation, it helps with bonding, and in that scenario you'd find that there have been more of a bond with father and baby, even using something as simple as kangaroo care.
Yeah.
And so even the myth, or when they say that baby will not take a bottle because mother is around, and the baby knows, why are you giving me a bottle and my
and
mom
yet
can breastfeed me?
there's a better option around here.
Yes.
Okay.
So there is some truth to that.
Yeah,
Yes.
the baby knows.
The baby
All
knows.
right. Now, Dr. Mulu, of course, that aspect of affordability, accessibility, and of course, regulation, which is very, very important to make sure that at the end of the day, the baby is not just given milk, but good quality. The regulation also covers on the selling part. And looking around, like we said, not everybody can afford the high-end, top-tier, you know, products or devices that the baby would need during feeding. But then again, we see a lot of this in the market, right? Where it's very cheap, it's very affordable. You can get one for as little as 100 shillings and you have a feeding bottle. So then that aspect of selling and making sure that it is good, it is as per the regulation. Again, what exactly does this mean? And especially when it comes to selling, is it some standard? Do you look at the quality? Do you look at the material that is used to make the bottle? Or what happens?
I think, and again, there is, that's why we have the Kenya Bureau of Standards.
Yeah.
To ensure that every product that is sold or marketed or donated in this country meets certain international standards.
Yes.
There are international standards, and of course from that we have the country standards. So of course, and the government in the last few years has tried a lot to remove counterfeits from the market, because what has been happening is despite the good regulations and standards, there have been counterfeits finding their way into our market.
Yeah.
And that explains why we would have some substandard products. But I think there has been a crackdown in the last 3-4 years on counterfeits in this country. And therefore, that is not in the domain of the Ministry of Health per se, but because we work together as a multi-sectoral approach to these issues, because our team from the ministry also works with KEBS to ensure that the international standards that are set actually meet the standards that we require as a health sector. And therefore, and we sit in those committees and boards as health professionals and representatives of the Ministry of Health. So the bottom line is, in terms of the standardization of what products get into the market, that is the domain of the trade, which is the Ministry of Trade, and Kenya Bureau of Standards is one of the agencies of trade.
Yeah.
But in terms of now, the Ministry of Health and ensuring that we continue, and why all this? Why all this? It's because we have struggled with infant and child mortality over the years.
For a long time, yes.
If you look at maternal mortality, for example, over the last 20 years, there has been a significant decrease from 500 to now 260 something per 100,000 live births. When you look at infant mortality, for example, we have probably reduced by 2 per 1,000, per 100,000, over 30 years. That tells you something.
All right.
That the child health space requires more interventions. And one of the inexpensive interventions that we can or we can deploy is breastfeeding. And therefore, that is the essence of this policy of promoting. When you look at now the child nutrition in terms of standing, 1 in 4 children are stranded in this country. What does this mean? It means this only 1 child in 4 children grow to their full potential. Because once the brain develops in the first 1,000 days of life.
That's true.
So if you lose at this point, then it means you have lost that child, not that person, forever into their adulthood. We are seeing emergence of diseases amongst children like diabetes, obesity in children. What are the root causes of some of these things?
All right.
It's poor nutrition. And this poor nutrition begins from birth. And therefore, that's why breastfeeding is very, very important to us as a ministry, to us as an industry.
All right. And remember how we said earlier on, and especially with the introduction of the CAP, that one has to be very, very patient, right?
Yes.
This is just me thinking about someone who has twins and they are hungry at the same time, right? And you need to feed them, right? I mean, when the baby's hungry, they're hungry. And then let me finish with this one and then I'll come back to you, you know?
Yes.
So then in such a case, how do you make sure that these 2 babies are fed and at the same time and they are full and the quality of milk, again, is still of good quality? Because not everybody, and especially for someone who does not have the kind of support, you know, that is usually advocated for, that, hey, you need to get this kind of support, right?
Yes.
What happens in that case?
Okay. So when it comes to mothers who have twin babies, so
well, let's just say multiple,
yes,
right?
or multiple babies.
Yes.
So there are breastfeeding positions that we teach the mother how to breastfeed the babies simultaneously.
All right.
Especially in a twin situation where you have to feed twins together. There's a position called the football hold.
Okay.
And I think maybe we need to have a discussion about different breastfeeding positions that
Yes.
help. But there are positions that assist mothers with multiple babies to breastfeed. And even if the mother is not able to breastfeed, there are ways that we want the support system to be there. Remember, it takes a village. It's not just for this one mom to take care of twins. Because when it comes to breastfeeding, it's about the environment that the mom is in. Is she well rested? Is she having proper nutrition? Is she getting enough support around her? So this is where part of the education comes. If you're having a mom with multiple babies, we want to find out what kind of environment are you going home to. Are you going to be able to breastfeed these babies and sustain the breastfeeding? What kind of support do you need? And when I talk about healthcare workers, we have a myriad of healthcare workers. We have breastfeeding, lactation nurses and counselors who come to your house to be able to help you and support you. So even in a situation where you feel that you do not have a partner or you do not have help which is readily available, that is where we come in as healthcare workers. We want to be able to help this mother. And there are mothers who breastfeed twins and do it all the way to 2 years and even have enough milk to donate to other mothers with the proper support. So we need to look at mom's nutrition. How much is she getting? Is she able to sustain proper nutrition and hydration? Is she getting enough support so that she's able to rest in between the feeding? And the thing that a lot of parents and people out there need to realize about breastfeeding, it's a supply and demand. The more you breastfeed, the more milk supply you have.
Okay.
So this is why we're also encouraging a mother with multiple babies. Breastfeeding is still your best option. The more the babies are emptying the breasts, the more your brain tells the breast, we need to produce more milk for these babies. And you'll find this will be a mom who will be able to sustain breastfeeding very well with the right kind of support.
Okay. All right. Let's take a break. But of course, when we come back, remember we talked about an aspect of infections, ear infection, would want to understand more on the same. And then again, a case of someone who's thinking, okay, fine, so how do I do this, you know, and also the regulations for the manufacturers, because we know that this is supposed to take effect on 30th of May. Are they ready? You know, there's a lot that we need to talk about. But of course, remember that we asked you earlier on, do you agree with the health ministries, you know, as far as regulation on formula and as well as feeding bottles again? You know, do you agree with you know, the health ministries, that is regulation on feeding bottles and formula? Would also want to take a look at what you had to say, really, as far as the topic is concerned. And of course, all that is coming up after this break. Stay with us.
First Lady.
You were never really prepared to have a child. I am tired of trying to keep you happy. All day long I worked so hard. I do tons of paperwork and I organized my whole day to fit in this appointment, only for you to forget and not care how it affects me.
I'm so sorry, it was my fault.
Yes, everything was your fault, yes.
Federico, please calm down.
Not only do the two of you go gallivanting who knows where, but you also don't seem to mind how filthy she left her room.
Oh, I'm so sorry. We were in such a rush that I didn't get time to organize everything.
Well, go clean up the mess you made and then feel free to leave this house.
No, excuse me, but she's not leaving from here.
Get peace of mind and protect the ones you love with the power of Dettol bar soap. It cleans and protects from up to 100 illness-causing germs. So no matter what type of mum you are, trust Dettol.
Glovo delivers anything you want in minutes, like some crispy chicken. Download the app and order a Glovo.
Download Glovo to get Streetwise 2 plus free soda at 370 shillings from KFC.
This is your captain speaking. We are now airborne. I know you are calling to ask if this is the first class flight. Omera, you have paid 500 shilling for this flight. What do you expect? No food shall be served by a beautiful Jabel, and the pilot will not come out to greet you. As a matter of fact, we do not know how to land this thing safely, and I forgot to tell you, we are all... If you want to get this skizzer and suit to 30,000 feet above mean sea level, dial *812*800#. Skiza na Nison, supporting local talent.
Dhima ya uongozi ni kubwa mno.
Ni ule ambao nasema upuzi wa kisiasa.
Si gavana wangu, nilisema niliibiwa kura.
Kuna wale wanaoibeba barabara.
Nani angefikiri kwamba Uhuru wangeungana na Ruto?
Kuna watu huko mabroka huko nje makateli.
Lakini kuna wale ambao mzigo kwa hakika unawalemea kabisa.
Hii ni mtu wa mtatu.
Oh, Kenya waulize maswali mengine.
Kila siku ya Jumatatu jioni tunawaweka kigodani viongozi wako.
Hapo tuko tofauti.
Hapo tuko jipe kati ya alama 10.
Swali hili ni swali la utata sana. Watu wanaanguka kwa sababu ya maswali.
Na mwisho wa kuisha basi, lengo na shabaha ni kuhakikisha tunashajiisha uwazi na uwajibikaji katika safu zote za uongozi humu nchini.
Make this feel like this with a few sips of this. Get going with Go Fruit Juice. Now available in 500 ml on the go packs.
All right, welcome back. The last phase of the show, and of course, it's all about breastfeeding dynamics today. And the question that we're asking you is, do you agree with the regulations by the Health Ministry as far as they know formula and bottle feeding is concerned? Once again, do you agree with the regulations on feeding bottles and formula? Keep tweeting at NTV Kenya at Lubembe_Winnie. I have a question here that I think Dr. Bulwa, you might actually take this, and then probably and also want to hear a comment from Dr. Mate. And this is Chepo Kapsile, all right, who says, we've been giving kids cow's milk, so did our ancestors. So how do you change your mindset, considering nothing bad has ever happened?
I think I will disagree with the nothing bad has ever happened.
Okay.
A lot of bad things have happened.
All right.
Daktari already mentioned children developing allergies. We have had deaths as a result of infants as a result of breast milk substitutes in the past. And of course, there are multiple factors that led to high infant and child mortality in the past. Some of these emanating from this because the children do not have the right immunity and therefore are not able to fight diseases as well as children who are exclusively breastfed. And therefore, we have, of course, survived, but the survival has come at a cost because we have lost quite a number of children as a result. So the reality that cow's milk and has been used from pre-ancestral period does of course we do not deny that it has happened. It's come with a cost, and scientific evidence has shown the importance, the value, the advantages of breast milk. So and that is the advocacy that we are doing. That is what we are doing, to say that here there is a danger of substitutes do not confer you the antibodies that you require, exposes you to infections, the delivery mechanisms, if bottle feeding, for example. All this, that is what we are saying is, yes, we have survived, but only some have survived, not all.
All right. Dr. Mateo, chime into the same?
Yes, I agree. The notion that we have been doing this traditionally and nothing bad has happened is flawed. Because like we said earlier, it's about public health. It's not about individual health. And just because something bad has not happened to you, it doesn't mean that it hasn't happened to other children.
That's true.
In the clinical setup, we have seen a lot of children not only getting allergies, but severe illnesses associated with cow's milk. Where children get severe allergies, you have children who come and they're severely malnourished. They're coming in with diarrhea associated with cow's milk products. These are not things that are either known to the general public. And even earlier on, or in the earlier years, there were not too many demographics to indicate how many children died as a result of this. Now we have more studies and more demographics coming up. So it informs us about the number of children who were affected because of feeding associated with cow's milk products. And it is upon us to use that information to educate. So the notion that nothing happened,
we turned out okay,
may not be accurate in a public health kind of standpoint.
Okay,
yes,
I see that. All right, so Gaki, was there like a specific type of cup that you had to use? Si we're in the house, si we're at home. Whatever cup is available, we give that. We use that for the baby.
Okay, of course we used a baby cup initially because that is you know, their size and all that, and sometimes they want to hold it, they want to help you in the feeding, you know, once they get to understand this is a nice thing for them. So you get a cup that is of their maybe age, you know, and size, but at least always use the open cup if they have to feed from the cup, or they use the spoon to put into the mouth. So there are a variety of cups, but sometimes you're tempted to use a bottle, especially when you're moving around, you're traveling and you still want to carry your breast milk and to feed the baby when you are away. So that's also a challenge in the sense that how do you warm it, you know, when you're, you know, on the road or wherever.
And even just carrying it and making sure that the milk is secure and again still observing hygiene. How did you do it?
Wow, that's interesting because moving around and maybe you have a trip to make and you want to go with your baby, you need to do a bit of planning well before time.
Okay.
You know, keep your clean items, you know, maybe in a bag. Keep your milk somewhere where you know you may be able to heat it very fast. Maybe carry a thermos of hot water so that you're able to dip the bottle into the water. So there are some basics that you have to do, which sometimes become cumbersome, quote unquote, until you get used to them. And sometimes mothering is not about a one-off, you know, activity, because it's a process you'll go through for a long time.
Yeah.
So some of these things you just have to get them ingrained into your mind, and again change the mindset. Don't assume that it's quick fix and we are out of here.
Yeah.
It goes for a good long while.
Yeah. It's work, essentially what you're saying. It is a lot of work. Okay. So then, were there specific type of bottles that you had to use to put in the expressed milk that then it made it easier for you to warm? Or did you just use the cups and then, like you said, carry some hot water in a thermos and, you know, warm the milk? Yeah.
These containers that you store the milk in are usually they are watertight when you store the milk.
Okay.
So maybe when you want to dip it into some hot water to heat it, then it's not going to allow, you know, the hot water to come in. So you just have to regulate how long does it stay in the hot water so that it doesn't become too hot either, because it could be too hot and you burn the baby in the process.
True.
So it's a bit of balance there.
Yeah.
And keep testing if you're getting the right temperature before you feed your baby.
Okay.
Yeah, but the containers generally which are in the market are good.
All right.
Yeah, for storage.
And then there's also another question of how then do you know how much the baby would need? Because like you said earlier on, there's a bit of wastage, right? Because now once the cup is again exposed, you don't want to store the same milk, right? So then how do you know how much the baby needs at a particular time? Because you might think the baby's too hungry. They just wanted some bit of attention, give them some small milk and they're like, thanks, I'm okay, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so how do you know?
Sometimes, especially when it's a newborn, they just take very little, maybe a spoon or two, imagine. So you have to be really careful and keen, especially on how you've been instructed to feed them. And again, that's when the breast milk becomes so important. When the breast, you know, you don't have to care how much they go to feed. But again, just listen to the instructions you're given. Whenever you're told, maybe just give a little. Yeah, wait a bit. Maybe sometimes they didn't want the milk, they wanted some soothing. You know, so you also have to learn the language of your baby, the language of your child. And you can't force feed, because you might do that and cause more problems than you wanted. And again, that's when the caregiver, especially beyond the mother who is staying with this baby during the day. You know, I was so lucky that, you know, my mom stepped in because she had, that baby has refused to breastfeed. You know, she came in running, and so she was able to offer that support. Social support is really, you know, you cannot even measure it in terms of money. So whoever is helping you in caregiving, do they know what to do? You know, get them to understand. This is not like a one-night thing and then they are forgotten. They have to know the process and be patient even with the baby, because I think mothering is about a lot of patience.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And since you said, so you never used a bottle at any given point with your first child? Right.
My first child, I think when he was a bit older, you know, and he could maybe carry his bottle around, when he could walk, that was a bit of when he got the bottle. But generally, the cup worked very well
for you.
And interestingly, when he was 11 months, when he was teething, he refused to take anything else except the breast milk. So it became another cup for me, because he did not eat anything else. He did not even take a fruit. He just wants his mommy's nyonyo. So that was really tough. You have to eat well, you have to rest well.
And ensure you have enough milk supply, right?
Yes. The milk was there, but you know, it can become very stressful when the baby is too demanding also.
Yeah, I mean, I want it now. Thanks. All right. Okay, so Hilary, for you, did you have like other alternatives, or you were fully dependent on the formula until you know, the baby was fully weaned?
At that point, my mind was not thinking of very many of that. I wanted the formula that I ate about, and I stuck to that.
Okay.
Because my fear was I could bring in something else, then get an already complicated situation. So since the formula was working, I stuck to the formula. The only thing I did was buy very many flasks. If he came to my house, you would have wondered, hey, this guy. Because I had this small flask that I would make sure that each has hot water, so that when I open one, because of course when you open the water, kind of goes a bit, it loses a bit of the heat. So I had so many little flasks.
Okay.
So each was meant to be for a session. So I would open one, use it. As I pour away the milk, the flask goes away as well.
Okay.
Then I made sure that I had one spot where it became sort of a breastfeeding corner for her.
Okay.
So every time you would wake up, you would go to that corner and just, because I was trying not to destabilize anything, because that corner for some reason seemed to work. Then for whatever reason, at that point, the baby refused his crib. So he would always just sleep in my arms. Yeah, like at night. Then I also realized that my mind kind of clicked on when he breastfed. When he woke up at night, I would wake up like literally 5 minutes before he woke up. It's like my mind now learned what he wanted and at what time. So I would wake up, and by the time he's waking up, I already put the milk in the Yes. My mind kind of had to adapt to everything. His system for us to work together.
All right.
Yeah.
And of course, given again some of these regulations by the Health Ministry, of course, safety is one of the things. So did you have issues, number one, in terms of knowing how much the baby needs? Did you get to a point where sometimes you would over-dilute, or the milk would be too thick for the baby? Like, did you have any issues maybe with allergies with your baby, especially the fact that they were on formula the entire time?
We had very many problems. I can't even start counting. We are all.
What happened?
But at that point,
yeah,
I was not trying to give this baby everything to the standard. I just wanted the baby to feed. You get, like, because everything was trial and error. First of all, I didn't even know whether he wants to feed or he's just has another problem. So you'd find most times I'm feeding him and he's just sleeping. Other times I'm feeding him and, he has a bad stomach. So I was doing everything just to make sure that he has something in his stomach to push him another day and another day, like that. Otherwise, I honestly would like to tell you, I knew all this thing about regulations and, quantities. I just wanted this baby to have the formula to sleep, because it was only when he slept that I would have my. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Let's take a look at more of your feedback. Interesting that you're saying, I just wanted the baby to feed, and that was it. And of course, Dr. Mata, you would react to the same. But for now, remember the question that we asked you, and that is, do you agree with the regulations as far as feeding bottles are concerned, as well as formula? So Waswa Esther says, if they're going to give us 6 months maternity leave, if they're going to put up a sustainable venture, clean and safe for women working in informal sectors, or better still, allow them to carry their babies and breastfeed them amid working breaks. And I said, okay, that's fine. And then, so there's that aspect of, if you give us 6 months, then we're good, all right? So Mudla, you'll respond to that. And then there's also the second part that says, what about moms who give birth and breast milk dries up? There are instances that can happen. Extreme cases, the mother dies after delivery. What happens? Is there an exception? May God help us, governments that will make decisions that will holistically benefit all humanity. Okay, so Dr. Mulo, that aspect of regulation. So we're regulating these, the selling, the advertisement, all these processes. But then again, there's also this other side where, have you considered some of these other measures, which is exactly what Waswa is asking?
I think we are, with the Ministry of Labour, I think that's a conversation that's ongoing.
All right.
To extend maternity leave to 120 days, which would be 4 months, and where possible, give mothers an option to take unpaid leave of absence or something of sorts. For maybe the 2 months before the child gets 6 months. These are conversations that's ongoing.
All right.
And I'm sure very soon will be concluded.
Can we have that by the 30th deadline?
Because we are trying to make the breastfeeding environment as accommodative as possible to both the mother and the child. that's a reality that we have to deal with. The other thing that we also have to deal with is the issue of ensuring that health education is done in a proper way.
All right.
When she explains what she went through, how she was taught on cup feeding, you feel she is one of the few mothers, one of the mothers who actually got exposed to a proper healthcare system. A functional healthcare system should be able to deliver express breastfeed milk, even for mothers who start work immediately.
That's true.
Because it's not given that all mothers have the luxury of leaves.
Having 3 months leave, that's
for
true.
some reason or the other, there are mothers who are unable even to stay for a month with the child. We recognize this because sometimes someone is in private business, and it's the private business that is that brings forth food for the household. You don't expect that new mother to close business for 6 months, who is giving her the leave because it's a business, for example.
That's true.
So it is how the health system educates, builds the capacity of this mother so that they are able to know how to express breast milk, how to store it, and therefore provide a chance for exclusive breastfeeding for 6 months. So the solution is not about what the government does, it is what we walk, the journey we walk together with the new mothers so that they understand how to breastfeed, when to breastfeed, how to express breast milk, how to store it, when to, and all that. The issue of breastfeeding in work environment, this is something also that is being considered. I think the bill is in Parliament, so that safe places, breastfeeding places in the workplace are introduced. I think this is a conversation that is ongoing. Very soon may also become law, so that certain every work environment has a breastfeeding, not corner, but breastfeeding space.
That's true.
So
that
that
is
mothers
hygienic
can,
as well.
can comfortably have their children come, be brought to the workplace at certain times. I think, and this is also very important. And when this discussion has also as well come out, that the feeding schedule, in terms of the how much you give, and also if you are able to have a regular feeding schedule, then you stop worrying much about how much, when, if, like, for example, you say, I am feeding the child every 3 hours, then you are likely to have the child full for the 3 hours. So because they'll take what is enough for them, they're like, so if you regularize that, and this is now the health system to be able to deliver that. She mentioned that there are healthcare workers of all sorts. There are lactation counselors, there are pediatricians, there are all sorts of nurses who are able to walk through the journey with mother. The beauty about the first year of life is the healthcare system works with the baby from preconception in ideal situation, through pregnancy, at delivery, and throughout the first 5 years of life. And therefore, we have an opportunity as healthcare system to interact with the child and mother at least once every month, even when the child is perfectly healthy. And if we are able to adhere to this, then it becomes easy to continue reinforcing the messages on breastfeeding and what a mother can do, depending on their circumstances, every month or often when they visit the clinics.
All right. And then Dr. Mate, that aspect of Hillary, and I'm pretty sure Hillary is speaking on behalf of so many people, and I'm saying men, who are like, Sasa mtoto ndo huyu, you know, take care of the baby, make sure the baby is well fed, make sure that the baby is okay, you know, as a whole. So that aspect of me, I just wanted to make sure the baby is full, right? And I'm sure it's a case for so many people. Is there a danger to the same?
There is a danger to the same, because then you're almost your driving force is almost from a stressful point of view.
And it can be stressful.
And it can be very stressful. And even whether it's fathers or somebody else who's feeding the baby, or even a breastfeeding mother, when your driving force is a stressful situation, then it comes with its own risks. So whether it's overfeeding the baby, or even in his case where he says he was using infant formula, and you're feeding the baby, and all you want is for this baby to be properly fed. You may overlook the nutritional benefit for this baby. And in that scenario where you say, I just want the baby to be full, and Hillary really resisted this, and I applaud you for that, is now you get situations where you're having either whether it's your mother or your aunties, and they're like, but why don't you just give this baby food? Why don't you start now feeding this baby with potatoes and pumpkins? And we've had those situations where now even more pressure comes in, and we completely lose sight of this child's health and what we are trying to achieve. And this is where we're saying you need to establish from very early on, even like you said, from preconception, what is your support system? And these stressors will come, and we're in Africa, everybody has an opinion.
Yes.
Everybody has an opinion, especially for a new mom or a new couple or parents who are raising a newborn. It's very stressful. You want the best for your child. You're getting opinions from the healthcare system, you're getting opinions from ministry, from social media, from your friends. And you're like, I fed my baby at 2 months and they were fine. And you're going to get all these opinions. But we're trying to say that if this is something that you can think of from preconception and understand, this is my support system. What happens when I'm stressed? And somebody has even asked in the feedback, what happens when my milk runs out? And that's a very common notion that we get from mothers. My milk ran out. I had no option. But what we want to try and help and support is, why did your milk run out? Did you have to go back to work after 1 month and you don't get adequate breaks at work? Can we approach it from that point of view? And like we're saying, we need a lot of support when it comes to protecting and promoting breastfeeding. It's not just about the bottles and the breast milk substitutes. It's about creating a friendly environment for mothers and parents of newborns to help this baby thrive. So we need to look beyond the bottle and say, what else can help me? Do I need a support system? Do I need to talk to somebody? Maybe mother is stressed. We've heard about postpartum depression, and the mother is not able to breastfeed because she's too stressed about being a new mom.
Look at the cause.
Yes.
Okay, so we literally have like 3 minutes to go. Okay. So Dr. Mulu, I'll take this very, very shortly from you, and that is so fine. All these regulations, have been enacted and all those things. So then, what policies need to be implemented just to make sure that the 30th May deadline, is not only met but also ensures the success of the same? Can you answer that in like 45 seconds?
Like I said, these regulations were gazetted in August last year, and therefore, and even before the gazettement, there was a public participation exercise. We engaged all the stakeholders, both in industry and in service provision, and therefore the industry is well aware. In fact, we have received a lot of requests for approvals of the new packagings, the promotions. So there is already a movement in preparation for that. That's why the 30th May was given to allow the industry. Remember, these regulations also went through Parliament as well.
That's true.
So both houses of Parliament, and therefore there has been a lot of time. So the industry is prepared for that transition come 30th May.
All right. Okay.
We don't foresee any challenges.
Okay. They shouldn't, right? Okay. And then Gaki, very shortly, in like 30 seconds for you, especially to those mothers who think, fine, I might want to embrace this, but then again, what is that one thing or maybe two that I need to know before embarking on a cup feeding?
I think number one is to know any mother duty is about patience. It's about just taking your time to understand your baby. Sometimes we are too maybe nervous, or we are too anxious about many things. I forgot to say I got a bit of postpartum depression because I couldn't understand why my baby rejected me. But over time, it's that came to wear out. So for me, I would say listen to yourself and also listen to your caregiver, your health caregiver. What they tell you is right. They are not malicious, and you're going to get out of it nicely.
All right. Okay, I like that optimism. All right. And Hillary, very quickly in like 30 seconds as well. So all the dads, all the men watching you and thinking, I knew you were too strong to make it work. Okay. What would you tell them? What is that one thing that they need to know as far as taking care of a baby is concerned?
I think men either are underrated, or we are not given the opportunity to just raise things, or we have this internal fear that we cannot raise a baby. But when the time comes, trust me, even the one who believes he cannot, when that day comes, you will actually discover it just comes from within. You only think you can't because you've not been in that position. But every man can actually raise a baby alone without one.
Okay, I see that. All right. And of course, on that note, we say goodbye. Thank you very much for watching. But of course, a special thanks to my panel today. Really, really informative discussion that we had as far as breastfeeding dynamics is concerned. And of course, like Dr. Mulo said, there's no ban, just regulations that need to be adhered to. 2 and 30th of May is the deadline. So I'm sure you've learned a lot from today's episode. My name is Winnie Lubembe. God bless. I will see you tomorrow morning, same time, same place for another interesting discussion. But for now, goodbye and God bless. Stay safe.